Steve Caruso here, and it's time for some Aramaic Q&A. This one is coming from our YouTube community channel by me, B3V, who writes, "What is the difference in reading Aramaic and translating into Aramaic? Meaning, once one can pronounce Aramaic and then read it, then casually speak it, is it more difficult to translate modern language into Aramaic, or do you need a cultural grasp too in order to do that?" And this is a really good question, and it kind of gets at the heart of something that a lot of folk have asked me for decades. Like, they'll say, I want to be fluent in the language of Christ, and I want to speak it as a second language with other people, and it's very highly aspirational sometimes. I mean, I have even aspired to try and do such a thing myself with some limited success. But there's a lot to unpack here, and I've gone ahead and I've written it all down. So let me just go over what we've got. So, like I said, this is a noble aspiration. Ultimately, folk want to walk as Christ did, and talking as Christ did kind of follows right along with that. And it's not too difficult to learn enough of a language to be able to have some casual conversations. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How's the weather? How much does that cost? Stuff like that, which is fairly universal to human experience. That's easy. Every language has that. However, if I were to try and say, yeah, I drove to work and the commute was really terrible, or I was just on Reddit and I found this awesome post with this funny video, what concepts could I possibly invoke in a language dead more than 1,000 years to cover those ideas in any kind of meaningful way? So because of this, with modern concepts, it's hard to casually speak Galilean, or really any kind of classical dead language in a modern context, because a language cannot be divorced from its culture, time, and place. So things like idioms, for example, are incredibly culturally dependent. If you were to say to me, yeah, only one guy in the meeting nobody was talking about, and I were to turn to you and say, yeah, a gold coin in a bottle goes jingle, 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 you know what I mean? Would that make sense to you? Probably not. But if both of us were rabbis in the first few centuries, we'd know that the phrase "Estrata belegina kis 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 kaya" meant a wise man among fools is easy to spot. Literally, a gold coin in a bottle goes jingle, jingle, jingle. So another school of thought is, well, why don't we just reconstruct things and try to bridge the gap with modern language and like modern loan concepts and stuff like that? Well, in that case, we have another problem. When we incorporate things that are outside of that language, its time, its place, and its cultural context, then we're adding concepts that did not properly exist in situ. We are, in essence, at that point, now building a constructed language. And at some point, we stop actually teaching the ancient language anymore, and we're starting to teach this new neo-dialect. Sometimes that can work. I mean, take a look at what's happened with modern Hebrew. Admittedly, modern Hebrew is a very different language from classical Hebrew, but one of the things that helped with that transition is that it had some kind of cultural continuity, even to this day, which is something that we really just don't have with Galilean. Most of the people who are interested in the Galilean Aramaic language do not share any culture with the geographical area and context and the different settlements that grew out of that. So they're interested more in like the language of Jesus in a Christian context. And the modern Christian movement as a whole spans hundreds and hundreds of cultures and hundreds of languages and hundreds to thousands of different cultural contexts. This is one of the reasons that Christianity doesn't really have a holy language like Judaism and Islam do. It's because it was a multicultural movement, and the idea of spreading the word of God was more important than the mere words it was expressed in. And that happened very early with the transition of early Christianity being a predominantly Jewish movement to becoming a predominantly Gentile movement with just a few generations. And its holy texts spread predominantly in Greek, the lingua franca among many different peoples. But still, this is where studies like textual criticism and other things that come in, like where people have realized this over the years and have said historically, maybe we should take a glimpse back at that cultural context to have a better understanding about what Christ taught. And Galilean Aramaic, in that context, is absolutely invaluable, despite the fact that it's incredibly misunderstood. But again, it is in the context of looking back, not looking at the present, and certainly not looking forward. My opinion? Well, why not try to do a little bit of both? If we can raise awareness of Galilean with a very strong grasp of its limitations as a spoken language for modern use, we can, at the very least, do something that is enjoyable, if a little bit nerdy, if you catch what I mean. Perhaps we can, as the phrase attributed to Luther says, to sin boldly and try anyway. Or, as I like to say to my students, engage in Miss Frizzle protocol. Get messy, take chances, make mistakes. But at least be aware of some of those mistakes. That's going to be the trick. And just see where it leads us. In any case, I hope that answers that question. Until next time, Shalom Lachon.